Hi there, Robert John Hadfield here again from Audiomover, talking about analog. A lot of the videos we made over the years were about cassette tapes and, a lot of the things that we do here at Audiomover, which is we convert analog media to digital. We decided that we should start making some more videos about other analog things that we love, and one of them, for me especially, is just records. I'm a nut for albums. My entire record collection is in the front office of the studio here, and there's several thousand of them up there. And so I really enjoy it. And I still go buy these things and shop for them, and it's a lot of fun. So anyway, this is one of my favorite albums from the 80s. I absolutely loved Scorpions, and I loved this album. I thought this album was, for me, this was the quintessential Scorpions album. This is the one that where they reached their peak. They were at the top of the game with this album here. And first of all, how do you beat this cover? This cover was just so cool, and especially for a teenage boy. You see something like this, and it was just cool. It was awesome. You don't even know what it means. It's just the artwork here is so spectacular. Whatever this thing is with the forks in the eyes, and I loved it so much in art class in like middle school or whatever, junior high. I did a painting of this because I loved it so much. And so anyway, this was so cool. And this album came out, I think it was 82. I'll look on the back here in just a second and see. But the Scorpions were out of Germany, and they had they'd been around for quite a while before this album. And they go back into the early 70s. And they had a few different lineup changes, specifically with the guitarist. They had a guy named Uli John Roth that played with them for a while, who's actually kind of a really well-known guitarist even today, just kind of a legendary guitar player. They had Michael Schenker, who also went on to have a really incredible solo career, album after album after album, classic, really, really well-known guitar player from that era. He was actually the brother of one of the guitarists in the band named Rudolf Schenker, who anyway is still with the band and was in the band here. But they'd gone through these different guitar players, and then they picked up a guy named, I'm sure I don't pronounce these names correctly, but it was Matthias Jabs. And when he joined the band, and their first album with him was an album called Love Drive. And then they had an album called Animal Magnetism, which has a song that most people have probably heard before, and it's called The Zoo. And it was just one of the classic Scorpion songs, and it really became really, really popular. But my point was, Matthias Jabs added a sound to the band that really just kind of took them over the top, made them really spectacular as far as a group goes. And this is where the whole thing kind of settled into what their long-term sound, was. And I actually thought of this album. I wanted to talk about it because I heard the song "No One Like You," which most people have heard the song before. I was at the gym this morning, and it was playing over think about that. This came out in 92, like 40 years ago. This album came out, and it was being played in a gym today in 2023. Over this sound system, because it's just this classic music that just it withstands, at least so far, the test of time. So anyway, the album cover on this was just cool, and the Scorpions had this logo that they'd had for a long time, and they just always had this same logo, which is always great marketing for a band if you can have that one recognizable logo, and they certainly had it. All right, so let's flip this over and look at the back. And this is just a continuation from the front with the glass flying around. But let's go through the tracks, because there were so many great songs. This one was another one of those songs from the albums from the 80s that I thought didn't have a bad song. And as a matter of fact, side A, side B, I could probably, if I put it on right now, I could probably sing along with almost the entire album. It was that good, at least to me. And it sold a lot. I mean, it was a really, really popular album. So the song Blackout, I really had a blackout. Na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Great song, Can't Live Without You. It can't live without you. You could kind of sing along with it. It was a great tune. No One Like You. This is the one that I heard in the gym this morning, and it's what made me want to bring this album out today, was because I had heard this song. And, once again, this idea that how this stuff really stands the test of time. So, there's no one like you, I can't wait for the nights with you. I've heard that song before. Anyway, that's on this album. You Give Me All I Need, great song. You give me all I need. It's awesome. And then Now, oh my gosh. Now was such a great tune. It was this super, super fast rockin' tune. And now. If you haven't heard this song before, you need to go listen to it. It is powerful, straight ahead, fast rock and roll, and it's so cool. Klaus Meine, whatever his name, however you pronounce his name, is such a great singer. And boy, he just shines on this album, which is kind of interesting because you'll see in just a second that on the special thanks, you'll see the name, I don't know if you can see that in this camera because it's so small, but you'll see the name Don Dokken. And Don Dokken, Klaus had some problems with his voice prior to this. And they apparently brought Don Dokken in to sing the parts so they could work out the music. And there was some question whether or not Klaus was ever going to be able to sing again. I'm not sure what the issue was, but he had some sort of illness. And so Don Dokken was brought in as the singer for the Scorpions for a short period of time in the studio. And that's why they have a special thanks for him here. I say that because Klaus has such an incredible vocal performance on this album. I mean, he's at just top form. And you wouldn't realize that while they were working on this album, he couldn't sing. And eventually was able to come back somehow and do this. And anyway, incredible album. Dynamite is a great tune. Arizona is actually kind of a fun song. Arizona really wasn't. It's a super cool tune. China White has it has this really plodding, almost Led Zeppelin kind of thing. If you want to listen to something that it's the really oddball track on this album, and it's also one of my favorites. It's reminiscent of things like, if you like Kingdom Come, the song 18, it's that kind of a song, and it's just great. And then When the Smoke is Going Down is more of a slow song. And anyway, the entirety of this album is so spectacular. And the band members that just listen here, Klaus Meine, of course, he's the lead vocalist. Rudolf Schenker is the rhythm guitar player. Matthias Jabs, he's who I mentioned a second ago, lead guitar. Francis Buchholz is the bassist, and then Herman Rarebell's the drummer. One of the things that Matthias Jabs added to this band, and you hear it all over this album, is he is playing solos almost constantly. Where you've got Rudolf Schenker holding down the rhythm through this whole thing. Go listen to this and you will hear that just in between lines, in between things that Klaus is singing, right after a chorus, right before, they're just interspersed. There's just this solo playing happening all over the place, and it adds this incredible energy to the music that wouldn't be there if you lost these licks, these solos that he's throwing in all over the place. So he was great in that way. And I don't know how much of that was just him deciding to do this, or if it was the fact that this producer, who's a guy named, I got to find his name on here, produced by, where is his name? His name is Dieter something. And he's a really, there, additional recordings, his name is Dieter Dirks. That's right, I remember now. Here it is right here. Produced by Dieter Dirks. Dieter Dirks he has so many credits to his name that it's crazy. Most of the stuff you've never heard of before. But he did, because he's just a German guy, and a lot of the things that he produced were in Germany for forever. Going back, I think, even possibly into the late 60s. And then just through the 70s, just thing after thing, just all kinds of different things, whether he was an engineer, whether he was a producer, he just did all this work. Well, then, so he did Love Drive, he produced Love Drive, he produced Animal Magnetism, which were the two albums before this one. Of course, there were other albums prior to that by the Scorpions. These are the ones that Matthias Jabs, and the ones that I think were the great albums. And then he produced this one. And then there was something, and I think it was probably the success of the Scorpions. He started moving into more mainstream acts, getting involved with really, really mainstream stuff then. He was involved with Twisted Sister, Come Out and Play after this. He was, the band Accept, they recorded some of their biggest stuff at his studio, like Restless and Wild and Balls to the Wall, which I think are maybe two of Accept's greatest albums. They were recorded at his studio. He, and one that I can't forget. One of my favorite bands from the 80s that most people don't even know anything about was the band Black and Blue. And Dieter Dierks produced the first Black and Blue album, which there's a song on the first Black and Blue album especially called Hold On to 18, which is just, it is one of my favorite, I say this over and over, it's one of my favorite songs coming out of the 1980s. And anyway, he produced that. Jamie St. James, who was the singer for Black and Blue, I saw him years later singing for Warrant just in a little bar in downtown Denver. And I went up to him afterwards, and I knew he was singing for them, and I took a copy of my first Black and Blue album and had him sign it. And anyway, so Dieter Dierks was just this really, really important guy in the music industry, and he's the guy that produced this album. And it might have been what helped this thing, he was so experienced and had done so much work, it might have been what helped them really, really take shape and do some awesome stuff and turn this album into such a great, great record. So let's take a look on the inside. Of course, they have this live shot. And if you ever saw the Scorpions live, especially in their heyday, they were just amazing. I saw them on this tour. This was right before Love at First Sting, which is the one that has Rock You Like a Hurricane, which, of course, everybody's heard that song too. And I saw them on the tour right before they released that album. But they were still touring on this one. And they were just awesome. I don't know how else to put it. I saw them in Balch Fieldhouse at CU in Boulder, Colorado. And they were just over the top great. The great performers, great band. All the players are good. Just professional, awesome stuff. They were great. Anyway, this is a little bit of what it's like watching them. Rudolf Schenker's Wild Man. And this gives you an example of what that kind of looked like. And then on the other side of the inside, they have the track list, and then who wrote music and lyrics, for each one of these songs. And let's see, so the year was 1982. 1982 was an amazing year especially for hard rock. The fact that this came out then, and I mean, there were so many great albums that came out in that period. Anyway, so that's Scorpions' Blackout. One of the great, if you're into hard rock or heavy metal, this is just a must-have. It's just one of the classics from that era, from the 80s era. And it's hard to beat it, at least from that style of music. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe to the channel, and give us some feedback on what other albums you'd like us to talk about. We've got thousands of them, and there's all kinds of fascinating things to talk about with these. And obviously, if you have old audio and videotapes and you need to convert them to digital, or if you know somebody that does, because you probably do, tell them about us. And go to audiomover.com. That's audiomover.com, and get your order started there. Anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.